We are saved not by being right, but by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. In the name of God, to whom we belong, but who does not belong to us. Amen. Our collect this morning prays that God increase our faith, hope, and love. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. And no virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own standpoint. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. Reinhold Niebuhr wrote those words in his book, The Irony of American History. His words apply to today's gospel about the Pharisee and the Publican, the tax collector. Two men went up to the temple to pray. Having just returned from the Holy Land and having so recently climbed to the very Temple Mount to which Jesus refers, it is even more clear to me that the two men had to go up to the temple, and that one of them came down to his home from the Temple Mount justified. The one who was saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. The publican is in love again, and his leadership brings us to understand that confusing term, justified, or justification. Paul calls it righteousness. Leadership. In the early years of our country, one southern family stood out in offering leadership to a fledgling nation. Most renowned among the first families of Virginia, the Lees, were wealthy, capable, intelligent, and dedicated patriots. They were also committed Anglicans and the first Episcopalians, founders of our oldest church, Christ Church, Alexandria, Virginia. Using the legend of the Lee family, lyricist Sherman Edwards crafted a clever song for his Broadway musical 1776. In a classic scene, John Adams challenges fellow Continental Congress member Richard Lee, great-grandfather of Robert E. Lee, to get his Virginia colony to pass a resolution calling for independence from England. And Adams concludes with a prayer, "God help us." Mr. Lee replies confidently, "He will, John, he will." Then, as if to prove his statement, Mr. Lee launches into this delightful song text. They say that God in heaven is everybody's God. I'll admit that God in heaven is everybody's God. But I tell you, John, with pride, God leans a little on the side of the Lees of old Virginia. This humorous song rings true because it is so natural to think that since we are faithful, we must be special, and that God must be on our side. It's a good example of what Jesus was getting at when he told the parable in today's gospel reading. The Pharisee in the parable was basically a good guy, a member of what might be considered one of the first families of the faith. But like Lee in the play, he lost sight of his place in God's world. He allowed his prayer to degenerate into prideful boasting, and he came to the erroneous conclusion that since God was on his side, God could not be on the other guy's side. He made the most common mistake made by religious people. He assumed that God, too, was like he was, a Pharisee in this case. Christians too often do the same. we assume that God is, of course, a Christian, but God is not. Faithful Muslims often assume the equivalent, that God is, after all, a Muslim, but God is not. Orthodox Jews perceive that God is also a member of the chosen race, but God is not a Jew, nor a member of any race. God is God, and we belong to God. God does not belong to us. Any religion belongs to God, but God does not belong to any religion. The word religion means binding. I bind unto myself this day the strong name of the Trinity, says St. Patrick's breastplate. But God cannot be bound, so God cannot be part of any religion. I am proud to be bound to the religion of Trinitarian Christianity, and for me, it is the best road to God. But God is the destination, not the road. And other roads lead home as well. Home to God, to whom we belong, but who does not belong to us or anyone. The Pharisee forgot something extremely important. He forgot about the need for repentance. He made the mistake of boosting himself by comparing his good qualities with what he perceived as the negative attributes of another. He set himself up as his own self-appointed judge of his own behavior. We can imagine the details of his thought process because we are tempted to engage in the same delusion. Replace the word Pharisee for a moment with the word Christian, and replace the publican beating his breast at the back with the word Muslim. How does it read? 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Christian, the other a Muslim. The Christian, standing by himself, was praying, "Thus, God, I thank you that I am not like people of other religions." And the Muslim simply said, "Allah, the merciful, have mercy on me, a sinner." But now replace Pharisee with Muslim and publican with Jew. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. The Muslim, standing by himself, was praying, "Thus, God, I thank you that I am not like other people of other religions." And the Jew simply said, "God, Elohim, have mercy on me, a sinner." And then replace Jew with Christian and do the same exercise. Such a simple prayer, but a prayer that Jesus says left the publican in love again, justified as he came down from the Temple Mount to pray. The examples I gave may be a little over the top, but Jesus was using the self-aggrandizing statements of the Pharisee in comparison with the prayer by the publican, the truly faithful man who asked simply, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." We are saved, not by being right, but by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. Perhaps this quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu will clarify something for us, as he was asked in London's Sunday Telegraph, "What will heaven be like?" Cancer-stricken Tutu responded, "I wonder whether they have rum and Coke in heaven. Maybe it's too mundane a pleasure, but I really hope so, as a sundowner. Except, of course, the sun never goes down there, does it? Oh man, this heaven stuff is going to take some getting used to." Archbishop Tutu. Our answer to what heaven is like should be a common answer: uninhibited presence with God. For as Tutu says further, we don't need to worry about who else will or will not be there. It is enough just to be there. You know how it is when you are sitting with someone you love and hours can go by in what seem like moments? Well, in heaven, eternity itself will pass in a flash. In heaven, we will never tire. We will never be bored because there will always be such new sides of God that will be revealed to us. The temptation in our culture is to imagine that we are autonomous and self-sufficient. Against that, today's gospel attests that a good life is a gift from God that is lived back to God, and that does not need to judge anyone else's position with God. The other readings this morning witness to a life fully dependent upon and responsive to the goodness of God. For Sirach tells us to give generously, for the Lord will repay us sevenfold. God is our comfort, and in the end, Israel knows that it has no other source of comfort. Psalm 84 voices an Israelite eager to come up to the temple to commune with God. The speaker yearns for God and knows that being happy depends upon connection to God. In his epistle to Timothy today, Paul ponders his own death. Unlike the self-righteous Pharisee, as Paul himself was, he says, a Pharisee, unlike the self-righteous man in the parable, Paul knows that it is God who gives the crown of righteousness. Paul trusts that God will, quote, rescue me in all times to come as the Lord stood by me in the past. All four readings testify to Reinhold Niebuhr's beautiful words. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. And no virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own standpoint. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. We are saved not by being right, but by the final form of love, which is forgiveness, in the name of God to whom we belong, but who does not belong to us.